out to Socrates. Socrates still trying to get the opening. Oh, Socrates! Whoa!
And there it is. The crazy gang have beaten the Culture Club.
Maggie Thatcher, can you hear me? Maggie Thatcher, your boys took a hell of a beating. Your boys took a hell of a beating.
Welcome to Module 9, I believe this is, of Your Boys Took One Hell of a Beating. We've got to a point, as already mentioned, that we don't have to say that in a Norwegian accent, because especially for this episode, we've got someone who can say that in a Norwegian accent, a genuine Norwegian accent at that as well. This is the origin module of Your Boys Took One Hell of a Beating. Where did that title come from, Dave? Dave Bowler.
I think it's my fault. Well, not originally; it's not my fault, obviously. But yes, from the legendary line of commentary that comes at the end of the game that we're going to discuss. Lord Beaverbrook, Henry Cooper, Clement Attlee, everybody's in there.
Oslo, September 1981. England with a simple trip to take on little plucky little Norway in the World Cup qualifiers. They've got England have had a bit of a polarising time in these the European Championship, the World Cup qualifiers towards the 1982 finals. Away from home, they've lost in Bucharest. They've even contrived to lose in Bâle against Switzerland. Quite inept on their travels. At Wembley, they've been unbeaten, although they've dropped a point against Romania. They have put 4 past Norway. I don't know, a bit of a bumpy win against Switzerland, I think we'd have to refer it to us. But June had brought these two polarising results on the back of losing away to Switzerland. England, 7 days later, were in Budapest at the legendary NEP Stadion to take on Hungary. And England went and won against the odds somewhat there. England had this magnificent performance in June. It's fair to say they've put the wheels back on this shuddering bandwagon that they've got on the go. Ron Greenwood, between the flight that took them from Bâle to to Budapest, he'd contended he was going to resign as England manager, and somewhere on that flight, be it players, coaching staff, he'd been talked out of it, and England pick up this win. Keegan and Brooking imperious. And fair play, it's one of the best England performances I remember seeing. I can probably count on one hand the amount of times that England have truly impressed me when I didn't expect to be impressed. And this was one of them. I'd throw it in with the Netherlands at Euro 96, the 5 that they put past Germany in 2001 under Sven-Göran Eriksson. And not too many other times, really, that I can, as an England agnostic, but one that just sees them as someone else's team, and I've nothing against them, but I'm not... I don't own the shirt. I don't own the scarf. Fair play to them in Budapest in June.
It was a terrific win and a terrific performance. And, I think when you look back at it, I think the significant thing is it's Brooking 2, Keegan 1. And that was the way England played in that period. That partnership between those two was absolutely crucial to anything England did in that kind of late 70s, early 80s period under Ron Greenwood. I suppose it was a slightly different sort of players, but I suppose it's akin to Bjørge Lillelien 4 years later. Those two were on the same wavelength, creating Brooking generally creating chances for Keegan. But it was those two that were the spirit, and of course they were the experienced players in the team, the most experienced players in the team, probably along with I guess Mick Mills at that point, probably Ray Clements. But yeah, coming away from Switzerland. We're going to come on to this Norway game shortly, but that defeat in Switzerland against a Swiss team that were having all sorts of problems was a dreadful result. And understandably, Ron Greenwood was about to chuck it in, and there was Brian Clough once again hovering in the background, ready to swoop down and take over England, or not, as the case may be. And you could understand why he was going to go, but football is a strange thing. They don't generally, unless they're completely ostracised from the team. Footballers don't like change very much. Even if the manager's having an absolute stinker, they tend to try to persuade the manager to stay on for as long as possible, largely because he's picking them, I suppose. They persuade him, and as you say, that Hungarian performance was a really good one. And then all of a sudden, England now become favourites, having seemingly blown the World Cup. they become favourites. And of course, you've got to remember the context. We failed to qualify in 74, failed to qualify in 78. Here we were with a World Cup with an extra 8 teams in it. And from looking like we weren't even going to manage to qualify for that, now we were back in the driving seat going to Oslo. Little did we know.
Indeed, and little did we know. And that's part of the intrigue in this one. No Trevor Brooking for this trip to Oslo. He's injured. No Dave Watson, who had a settled central defensive partnership with Phil Thompson. No Steve Coppell, who'd been the go-to winger for quite some time. Just fill in the kind of like the backstory of Ron Greenwood, as England manager. He'd come in during a time of massive turbulence in '77. Don Revie has made his infamous flip to the United Arab Emirates, and all havoc is breaking free. He oversees a couple of insipid performances. Unable to put a shipload of goals past Luxembourg when they needed goals. A goalless draw in a friendly against Switzerland, I think it was. But then an impressive performance in a 2-0 victory over Italy at Wembley. As a standalone performance, it's again an impressive performance. And Keegan, certainly, pivotal to that night, and that kind of swayed the FA towards giving Greenwood the job, with shades of Joe Mercer, perhaps, not getting the job in '74, and it being handed to Revie rather than going for a volatile Brian Clough or a still up and coming Bobby Robson, who were amongst the favourites in '77. Ron Greenwood was the safe pair of hands, and for the first 2 to 3 years, he actually kind of like got a fantastic tune out of the England fiddle. The results spoke for themselves. There was a settled side. Clements was in the main the goalkeeper. Shilton, just playing here and there. There wasn't this alternating of them that would come, and it's part of the dysfunction of England leading towards Oslo. It is a settled side. It's a 4-2-4 or a 4-4-2 if you want. 2 wingers, Peter Barnes giving balance, Steve Coppell on the opposite flank. A little bit of ambiguity in central defence, whether a 2 from 3 of Thompson, Watson, and Emlyn Hughes. You've got Phil Neal at right back, Mick Mills at left back predominantly, with occasional Trevor Cherry. And then you've got a midfield where there's kind of like plenty spoilt for choice, really, in Brooking, in Ray Wilkins, the emerging Glenn Hoddle, the clamour for Bryan Robson. There are lots of choices, and then up front again, spoilt for choice. There's Keegan, there's Latchford, there's Francis, there's Woodcock, there's Mariner. So an embarrassment to riches, and then there's the results to back it up. Some good performances, some good wins, and they cruise through to Euro 80 qualification. But it's from early 1980 that it starts to kind of go awry. Peter Barnes falls out of favour. And within that, the balance of the whole side is completely upset because there's no like-for-like winger that comes in. It's suddenly we've got this massive amount of midfield talent and we've got to crowbar a little bit of it in. This is where England start to play players, but it's square pegs in round holes, just for the sake of it almost. And they're never quite the same team going into 1980 as they had been for the first 3 years, should we say, of the Greenwood reign, the first 2.5 to 3 years. So the 1982 World Cup qualifying, as mentioned earlier on, dysfunctional on the road, doing a job at Wembley, very, very much so. You have to look at the teams that are the players that play through the qualifying campaign for England. I think it's 27 players make an on-pitch contribution during the 1982 World Cup qualifiers. Clements and Shilton share the goalkeeping duties. Shilton plays the games at Wembley. Clements all the away qualifiers. You've got Viv Anderson competing at right back with Phil Neal. Mick Mills just crowbarring him in wherever. Really, he plays central defence. He plays left back. He goes to Spain eventually and plays right back. You've got Phil Thompson, Dave Watson, Bryan Robson, Eric Gates, Terry McDermott, Paul Mariner, Tony Woodcock, Graham Ricks, the aforementioned Clements, Neil, Gary Birtles, Steve Coppell, Laurie Cunningham gets 25 minutes against Romania in Bucharest. Mentioned Mills, Brooking, Russell Osman, Wilkins, Trevor Francis, Kevin Keegan, Peter Barnes, Glenn Hoddle, Peter Wiv, Alvin Martin, and Tony Morley. The indecision is quite epic. I know some of it's down to injuries, but a lot of that is choice as well, though. There's as much choice in all those. There isn't a single game, there isn't a single qualifier to qualifier, where Greenwood picks an unchanged side. It speaks for itself a little bit in how dysfunctional this qualifying campaign gets for England.
As you said, in his initial couple of years, he was very much the settled side. They knew who was playing, they knew what they were doing. And then after that, it goes absolutely haywire. It goes back to the Don Revie process of, just chucking everybody in and hoping that something will stick somewhere along the line. And you kind of, at this point, you're pining for Alf Ramsey, who just says, right, this is the team, that's it, off we go. I think, you have to say that at this point, I suppose from Revie onwards, but particularly now you get into the 80s, the press are having an increasing amount of influence on the England manager. And, it's been something that we've rarely resolved ever since. All those things you've just been talking about, it's the same argument as Scholes, Gerrard, Lampard, and, similar arguments we've had in subsequent times. There was no sense that Greenwood was going to say, right, this is the team, that's how they're going to play. Okay, if we have injuries, we have injuries. I mean, it's just exemplified by the Shilton Clement thing, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, who alternates the goalkeeper ever? It's just bizarre. How can a defence settle down if they've got a different goalkeeper every time? How can the goalkeeper be confident if he knows he's going to miss the next game? It's the most ludicrous way of going about a football team that I can think of. Both Shilton and Clements will have their various supporters. We know which side we're on. But, make your choice. Make your choice and stick with it. I mean, they were both. I mean,
even within a system of auditioning them towards the World Cup, even that's kind of like slightly, it's tilted. Asking one to play the away qualifiers has always got to be the more difficult gig than stood at Wembley and maybe kind of like having 8 shots on target across 4 games. It's a very different proposition, really. But yeah, whichever way he was going to go, it made absolutely no sense to alternate. Totally ludicrous.
And then that just spreads the rest of the way through the side, then, doesn't it? Again, Phil Neal or Viv Anderson, make your decision. Which one's the better one? Is Kenny Sansom coming through quickly enough to be a left back instead of Mick Mills, who, as you say, he's a great player, Mick Mills, but he's just crowbarred in anywhere he can find a space for him, really. It's amazing he didn't play centre forward at some point. When we come onto this game, that is the thing that sticks out like a sore thumb. There is absolutely no balance in that England team that plays in Norway at all. It's a shambles. Ron Greenwood's been a manager for 20 odd years by that point. He's won FA Cups, he's won European trophies. He's an experienced, and that team just looks like is ragged. It's all over the place. It does not fit together in any sense at all. And to go from what he had sort of leading up to the European Championships in 1980 to what is a bit of a ragbag by this stage, when you look at the quality of the players he's got, and okay, in this game, we'll talk about Dave Watson and Trevor Brooking and Steve Coppell missing all really important players for him. But it's just an unholy mess, and we will inevitably have to address the Glenn Hoddle 1980s question at some point during this conversation as well. There's no way that team's set up to work.
No, I mean, looking at those 27 players, there is only one that starts every game. There's only one player that plays every single minute of those qualifiers, and that's Bryan Robson. Terry McDermott is the next closest. He plays a part in all 8 qualifiers, starts 6, 2 as a substitute. Nobody else plays every single qualifier there. It really is just a kind of perpetual roundabout of players on and off. It's a far from magical roundabout, put it that way. But still, England somehow go into Oslo in September 81. They found themselves in a much healthier position than their inconsistent form deserves. There's no doubt about that. This is their penultimate game of the qualifiers. They are top of Group 4. They're 1 point ahead of a very skilled Romanian side. who were under the leadership of Stefan Kovacs, the man who led Ajax to the 1972 and 1973 European Cup successes in succession to Rinus Michels, and they're 2 points ahead of the dangerous Hungarians. However, at the end of this game, England will have played two games more than Romania and 3 more than Hungary. So there's a huge amount of pressure on this game. A win is pretty vital. Certain circumstances to come will make that redundant, bizarrely. But at this point in time, it's clear as day that England, they can't lose this game in so many respects. They're not expected to lose this game to Norway. Yet this is kind of, I don't know, it's the new world of football starting to make itself known, because you've got this sense of superiority, clearly, of the English. And then here is this Norway side who, I don't know, it's intriguing that, some of the kind of the basic black and white stats about them are quite startling. It's nearly a year since they've won a game of any concept, any level at senior international football. Yet, they've only been beaten once in Oslo since the start of the 1980s. And that was a 2-1 defeat in World Cup qualification against Hungary, that fine Hungary side, where they conceded twice in the last 10 minutes or so, having led the game. And their only win, however, has come away in Switzerland, where England couldn't win. They're an intriguing proposition in Norway going into this game. Of course, there's the bubbling nature of the pitch, the long grass of the Ullevaal Stadium, and the sprinklers that are pointed out as being something of an unusual kind of aspect to it, which are kind of like de rigueur in Premier League football nowadays. But at the time, it's like, what are these these sprinkler systems going on here? It's all very bizarre. We're going to trip over the sprinkler systems. The grass is too long. There is clearly nerves in the air for England, certainly for those surrounding them, those covering them. We both sat and watched ITV's coverage of this game, which is available on YouTube. Do seek it out. It is magnificent. Absolutely magnificent. It's got all of the build-up and all 5 minutes of the build-up, but it's very telling. It tells its own story, the halftime analysis and after the game as well. John Bond is just an absolute work of art. He is an all-time hero of your boys. Took one hell of a beating. Dave, the landscape in this isn't as black and white as England would like to think it is.
European football changes so quickly in that sort of 1975 to 1985 period, doesn't it? If you think if England had played Denmark or Norway, let's say Denmark, in sort of 75, 76, you would have expected England to win 5-0. 10 years later, Denmark are going, close to winning a World Cup or a European Championship. It's moved really quickly, and Norway hasn't moved that fast. But, they've got 6 or 7 players that are playing in proper European leagues, and they're playing in the first division. There's guys playing in Germany and so on. They're not the collection of cliche alert postmen and bus drivers and factory workers that there's a few of them in the team, but by and large they're professional footballers. They know what they're doing, and the big thing, as is always the case in football, as has always been the case and always will be, they've got a few players who are really quick, and that always can cause trouble. However good a team is defensively, if you're up against quick midfielders, quick forwards, you can find yourself in trouble. So whether England's preparation in terms of watching Norway wasn't up to it, or whether it was just the standard arrogance of the English media that it's Norway, we shall roll them over, no problem. I don't know, but I mean, there's an interview with Kevin Keegan on that little bit of build up, and he's not fazed by the pitch or the sprinklers or any of that. He's relatively confident that England will do the job. He doesn't look like he's overconfident, but he believes in the team, sort of thing. But the Jim Rosenthal and John Bond, it's how many goals are we going to score a little bit at the start of it. We should win this one, and then we should be on our way to Spain. And don't forget, this is the first time that 2 teams are qualifying from the group, as opposed to the one when England got knocked out by Poland and by Italy in the previous 2. So there's a bit of a safety net as well. So there are literally no excuses for England in this group getting through, however good Romania and Hungary are. And they're both, very decent sides. There's no excuse from an England perspective. And here they are toiling into the last couple of games, really struggling. Yeah, it does seem a different world now, where England have usually qualified by about the fourth game for everything these days. Where fair play to Gareth Southgate for the way he's changed the perception of things in the last 8 years or whatever it is. But even taking into account that it is a changing world, England should qualify in the top two from this group, and here they are, in all kinds of peril.
In peril they are, but yes, this is the first World Cup. The expansion of the World Cup from 16 to 24 teams. UEFA, you just got to finish in the top two places. So it's become harder not to qualify for the World Cup. Yet, England will make it hard to qualify, no matter what the books say about them finishing top of the group in the end. Yeah, that Norway side, they played Nigeria on that same pitch just 4 weeks earlier and laboured to a 2-2 draw. But they'd stretch their legs in that in a way that England hadn't. This was England's first fixture of the season, the 1981-82 season. No butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, but there are players there that are playing domestic Norwegian football, which means that they're supplementing their meagre earnings with day jobs as well as electricians, accountants, policemen. But they do have players, in the English First Division, the Bundesliga, the Eredivisie. They're playing top flight football in Belgium and Greece. And even some of those still in Norway are being scouted. Arga Hareide would soon sign for Manchester City and go on to play for Norwich City. Anders Giske, his move to the Bundesliga would only be delayed by the fact that he was taking part in his Norwegian national service. You've got to throw history into this as well, which always plays a big part in England games. Just because they've put 6 past them in 1937, it means that in 1981 they're clearly going to roll over in exactly the same way. But yes, England have played 3 times in Oslo up to this point, 3 wins across the 1937, 1949, 1966 being the most recent at this point. An aggregate of scoreline of 24-2. There's huge interest in this game in Oslo. £6 tickets are being touted at £180 a pop, Dave. £180. It's it is an intriguing kind of demographic coming into this, because you've got to look at England as well, and we've mentioned now so many of these great players, yet the scattergun nature of selections. This is an England side that have been massively inconsistent. And across the calendar year of 1981 up to this point, that win in Budapest is the only one from the 7 fixtures that they've played up until this point in the calendar year of 81. 2 sides who don't know who they are and which version is going to show up. Accident waiting to happen, surely, Dave. Seems so obvious now, but even at the time, you'd have to look at that and think, yeah, historically, I think if that game was taking place now, there wouldn't be that sense of entitlement in a team going into the Norway of today, but maybe say going to even like a Macedonia, or you're looking for a contemporary version of the Norway then. You'd not be confident watching a national team, no matter what their historical repute or their high opinion of themselves, go into a team that is clearly plucked out of, say, pot 4 in the qualifying draw, with that track record behind them across the last 9 months.
Absolutely not. And I mean, it is the beginning of that period where I suppose the traditional whipping boy teams are all getting better and better and better. They're getting better coached. More and more of them are playing full time. They're just becoming generally better outfits who can, not necessarily better teams than England perhaps, but teams that can really, make life difficult for you. They're organised. They know what they're doing, and they're not just going to give up goals left, right, and centre the way that they used to. I mean, if you look at I was looking at the rankings before the game, whatever weight you give to the rankings, but England were 11th in the world and Norway were 76th. When you watch the game, and as I say, do go on YouTube and watch it, because it is another world. it doesn't look like there's 60-odd places between the two teams. That's for sure. And Norway go up to 67th afterwards, and England drop to 14th. England should win, and in the first half an hour, they look okay. They score the goal and they look okay. But I think as the game goes on, it's obvious that the missing players, just how important they are, how important Trevor Brooking is to that England team in the middle, how important Steve Coppell is getting up and down on the right hand side. He's not an out and out winger. He's doing a job in midfield as well, as we would term it these days. Those are big misses, and none of the players that come in look anywhere near that level. I mean, Russell Osman as well, good player for Ipswich, won the UEFA Cup, won a FA Cup, all that sort of stuff. But he wasn't Dave Watson. I would guess David played about 50 times for England at that stage. Top class centre half, and would probably have done a better job on the night. Brooking would have given him more control in the midfield than Glenn Hoddle did. I mean, I suppose Trevor Francis is probably the replacement for Steve Coppell, but he's not playing the same kind of game because he's not the same kind of player by any stretch of the imagination. When you look at that team and you look at the changes, and then you think of how Norway are a better team than they used to be, and they're an improving side. Absolutely, it looks like an accident waiting to happen, and there should have been no surprise that it was going to be a really difficult game.
Absolutely. I mean, just looking at that England team as a whole, Clements gets the nod ahead of Shilton. Both have had a difficult start to the season. Clements has moved from Liverpool to Tottenham on the eve of the new season. His debut was at Wembley in the Charity Shield. Drops a clanger as part of that. Has a difficult first few weeks. It's a difficult first season for Clements at Tottenham, really. He comes away with an FA Cup winners' medal and having been a runners-up medal in the League Cup, which is absolutely fantastic for a player who's just moved from the most successful team in England. And a run to the semi-finals of the Cup Winners' Cup thrown in for good measure. But he does go on to make an error in that. The ball slips through his hands, and so Antonio Olmo's infamous strike for Barcelona at White Hart Lane. So there's difficulty there, but yeah, the weekend before, and of course they were playing club football the weekend before as well. This is a period of time where it's very rare that the Football League suspends its games in preparation for an England game, and it was business as usual the weekend before. And Clements has conceded 3. I think it's against Aston Villa. Peter Shilton goes with Nottingham Forest to Birmingham City and concedes 4 in a kind of like, whatever you can do, I'll do. Hold my beer is the parlance, isn't it? So neither of them are kind of like in the peak of condition at this point in time. There's a lot of volatility going on. But Clements, this system of Clements playing the away qualifiers, Shilton playing the Wembley games. Phil Neal gets the nod at right back. McMills is playing left back rather than Kenny Sanson. Thompson is partnered by Russell Osman. Interesting that it would be the other Ipswich central defender that would go to the World Cup to partner Phil Thompson. Osman, would be hung out to dry for this one, and then later on for a performance in Denmark under Bobby Robson, the European Championship qualifiers. Bryan Robson's in central midfield alongside Terry McDermott, and Glenn Hoddle getting the nod here in the absence of Trevor Brooking. But within this, it's kind of like a 3-man midfield with Francis playing a link role between midfield and attack, with Keegan up front alongside Paul Mariner. It's interesting when you come and watch this, and Francis, you mentioned before, it's a fascinating part of this game. He has that late chance, which we'll come to as we get along. But yeah, he kind of has this almost a free role in a, I don't know, it's kind of like, I think in modern terms, you class this as a 4-3-1-2 formation to start with until desperation kicks in and he's asked to play as an out-and-out right winger, with Peter Barnes coming off the bench to play on the left, to just go typical English 4-4-2 Anglo-Saxon. We're in a bad position here. Let's dig ourselves out with a stereotype, shall we say? Yeah, this team, it's still the players involved. It's unreal. I mean, it's the big chance for Glenn Hoddle. Let's go for the Glenn Hoddle aspect first. This is the game that kind of it draws that picture in and colours it in, the dot-to-dot image of, oh well, he's a luxury that you can't afford at times, And Hoddle, undeniably, this game very much passes him by. There's no doubt about that. But given the players available, it's the strongest England side he can probably put out.
It probably is, yeah. I mean, he's very unfortunate with the ones that are injured. It's a bit of Gordon Banks in Mexico in 1970. The ones he wouldn't want to have injured are the ones that get injured. That's. But Glenn Hoddle, I mean, the formation. I mean, I was watching the game, and I'm trying to work out what the formation is all the way through because I've got absolutely no idea most of the time. You've got one central midfielder in Bryan Robson who is up and down until he smashes his head against one of the Norwegians and then roams around like he doesn't know what day it is for about half an hour after that in Bryan Robson fashion, really, getting injured all the time. Terry McDermott is not really, he's not a ball-winning central midfielder, is he? He's a creative footballer. So you've got him. Then you've got Glenn Hoddle, who ostensibly is another one of your midfielders, but isn't because he's not going to win a tackle. And that's, I mean, my God, here we are. We're talking about Trevor Brooking as a hard-working midfield ball winner.
As the voice of reason.
Yeah. But I mean, in comparison to Trevor Brooking's performances for England, I mean, Glenn Hoddle's nowhere at this point. And again, it's that thing of, well, we better play Glenn Hoddle, but I don't really know what to do with him. So we'll put him on the pitch and then let's see if he can work it out for himself. And I don't think he knows what it is that he's supposed to be doing. Nobody else seems to know what it is that he's supposed to be doing. Trevor Francis plays part of the game as an attacker, part of it as a right winger. It's a shambles, but Hoddle, it does create all the stereotypes for Glenn Hoddle. It's his 8th England cap. And for 30 minutes when England although Ron Atkinson and Brian Moore in commentary seem to think that England are playing really well. I mean, I think that's over-egging the pudding more than a bit. But England are okay for half an hour, let's say. And Glenn Hoddle does one or two nice things in that half an hour. And then as soon as Norway start to overrun England in the middle, you don't see Glenn Hoddle for the next 35 minutes until they take him off. And that becomes what everybody thinks of Glenn Hoddle, or certainly what football managers think of Glenn Hoddle for the next 10 years, isn't it, really? It is that classic, well, we've got to play him, but I don't know what to do with him. A bit like Paul Scholes was, later on for England, quite a lot of the time. We've got to get him in the team, but I don't know where to put him or how to put him, because we've also got to have Lampard and we've also got to have Gerrard. It's very much like that. There is nobody in that England team who, when Norway do get going and do start playing ball, I mean, it's nothing sophisticated from Norway. It's just pace through the midfield. They break through England midfield, and there is no midfielder there. When Norway knock the ball forward through the middle, there's nobody there to stop them. Basically, they're onto the centre halves really straight away. It's an absolute shambolic set of. Well, there's just no organisation basically when it comes down to it, and that for somebody like Ron Greenwood, who's been managing for God knows how long at that point, that's unbelievable, really.
It is. There's no defensive midfield in this at all. It's like a diamond formation, but forgetting to put in the defensive element. That pragmatist that's there to just kind of like do the basics and do them well. 65 minutes Hoddle is on the pitch in Oslo. It's his only 65 minutes of the qualifying campaign. He doesn't play a single minute beforehand. He doesn't play another minute afterwards. He will make the World Cup squad and play. I think there's one start against Kuwait, a cameo here or there from the bench. So yeah, it very much kind of like pencils in the stereotype image of Hoddle and the narrative that will carry all the way through that international career of his, that even kind of shades through the spans when he does play well, because there are spans when he plays very well for England. He's excellent at times during certainly the first half of England's qualifiers for the 1988 European Championship, and the build up to the 1986 World Cup, and he gets his big chance of the 86 World Cup. But at this point in time, these are the type of games in which the finger is pointed at Hoddle rather than the collective. But yeah, this is an England side very much, and then you've got the juxtaposition of Trevor Francis. Like you say, he's kind of. He's pushing forward to play in the front line. He's dropping back in central positions. He's drifting wide. He's trying kind of like to probe through different areas where he might be able to make a difference. But without doing so. And again, there's a point in this game in which Ron Atkinson brandishes him an enigma in England shirt. So, in that respect, Hoddle isn't alone in the game passing him by and being kind of accused of being that enigma. The word enigma having been, used to brandish Trevor Francis as well.
It's square pegs and round holes, isn't it? Trevor Francis, at least he's trying to make something happen, trying to make a nuisance of himself. Glenn Hoddle's just letting the game pass him by at that point. And yet, it doesn't make any sense to play Glenn Hoddle in that formation because he's got a work job to do as well as a creative job to do. And that was never going to get the best out of Glenn Hoddle. We all know that. And that's what England have done for donkey's years, isn't it? You look at all sorts of teams in the world, in world football, whether it's club teams or international teams, and they have a player like Glenn Hoddle, and they will build the team around him, and they will put him in a position where he can do all the damage. And Spurs did it with Hoddle, and then when he plays for England, we ask him to do something else. And then we're surprised that he can't do it. Well, that's not what he's there for. It's like an electrician to fix the toilet, isn't it? It's you do the job that you can do, and Hoddle isn't being asked to do it. And if he's playing in a 3-man midfield, the other two had better be able to win the ball and then give it to him, because otherwise, what's he going to do? And okay, Bryan Robson is a bit of a ball winner, but Terry McDermott, that's not his game. McDermott's a creative player. Robson, for all that he's a ball winner, he's back and forward, box to box all the time. So there's nobody there getting at Spurs. Somebody get the ball and give it to Glenn Hoddle. Now you go and do something. Nobody does that for England. And the English view is, but that's a luxury. We can't have somebody doing that. Just being the waiter for Glenn Hoddle. But that's how you get the best out of Glenn Hoddle, isn't it? Or would have been the best. How you got the best out of Glenn Hoddle. As it is, he's had 65 minutes here where he's probably touched the ball about 7 times. I'd know where to go with it, and then they haul him off. For Peter Barnes, let's face it, I've watched a lot of Peter Barnes at West Brom. They've had the most inconsistent and frustrating player at that kind of level you could ever imagine. So, to be given the yuck for Peter Barnes, that's saying a lot, really.
That's how we'll come to Peter Barnes in a bit. He arguably ends the game as one of England's most effective players.
That's exactly where we are, isn't it?
In those closing stages. But yes, the Norwegian coach, Tor Rostafossen, he said before the start of the game, if you stop Keegan, you stop England. That was where he set his stall out. So you've got this again intriguing kind of side story to this game. We mentioned Keegan's bullish post-match, pre-match interview with Brian Moore and Ron Atkinson. And he is clearly up for it. And his own performance is the best one in an England shirt that night, without a shadow of a doubt. He works tireless. He does Keegan things, very much so throughout the entirety of that game from start to finish. And you kind of get his slant in that, it sounds a foolish interview in certain terms. But you look at, if you break it down to Keegan's individual performance in that match, it was very much a case of, well, if his other 10 teammates had have been as up for it as he was, then they would have got this game won without any kind of drama. The Norwegian strong arm tactics, the clattering into him from the start, an impressive rotation system on the go as well, so as not to get one individual Norwegian defender into too much trouble. A lenient referee who shall we say, wants the game to flow. He's not really on for punishing these even for the era of kind of like September 1981. Some of these challenges did kind of warrant at least a stern talking to, if not the notebook of the referee coming out. Keegan is clattered on many occasions in this game, but he keeps on getting himself up and he keeps on putting himself into a... Keegan's nice. It's an unforgiving one for him, but he's probably the only one that comes out with a massive amount of credit from this game.
It is a magnificent reminder of hashtag different times. Some of the tackles are amazing. There's not a booking. I mean, even from the England perspective, towards the end, one of the Norwegian players, can't remember who it was, he's breaking through, and Phil Neal comes across and just absolutely, it's literally a forearm smash, knocks him to the floor, and the referee's only interested in talking to the Norwegian who's going to get him retaliate. Phil Neal just walks away, and that's the end of it. I mean, if it all sounds like the 1970 Cup final, doesn't it? But played today, this would be half a dozen bookings, wouldn't it? Easily. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's one where I'm sure it's Keegan that's barreled over for around about the sixth time, I think it is, and the referee's reaction to it is he wants Keegan to get off the pitch because he's close to the touchline, and it's just like that. That's his take. Get off the pitch. We can get on with the game, and it's a magnificent document of football of its time. But even then, you can tell from kind of like the commentary, and yes, it's always got to be a biased commentary from Brian Moore and Ron Atkinson of an England game in 1981. The tone of it is kind of like, well, how's he got away with that one? Or, surely the referee's got to kind of like step in and do that. But yeah, it's a monumental piece of art, really, isn't it?
It is. It's a fantastic reminder of it. And also, there's the incident where Bryan Robson and one of the Norwegian players clash heads. They're both rolling on the floor, and the game carries on for about 3 minutes before.
None of this kind of no smelling salts. None of this get them off the pitch. No concern of kind of like you shouldn't be on. It was and literally Robson does run around like a headless chicken for a good 15 to 20 minutes. A crucial part of the game as well for England. It's because they start the second half brightly. They've clearly gone in at half time. We'll come to the goals of the first half, but Robson's part in this, he is missing for a significant part of the first half of the second half, isn't he?
Probably first half he'd been as good as anybody for England. Typical Bryan Robson driving forward, all that kind of stuff. And then after that head clash, he's in a daze for 15 minutes. And
there's misplaced passes. There's questionable decision making, and it's clear that it's his head is spinning.
Yeah, today, no question, they would have taken him off. It'd be the concussion substitution and all of that kind of stuff for sure. And there's another one as well. A couple of players go down from either side. I think we just carry on playing. Never mind. Don't worry about that kind of thing.
Run it off. We'll be fine. You'll be fine. Back to the first half, though, and Bryan Robson. Yeah, you're up there with Keegan in terms of commitment and being involved. Yes, that head injury, which kind of it really was like a 20-minute span or so where he's just completely away with the furries. But it's Robson that breaks the deadlock, and there's a touch of the hand of Rob in the build-up to it. Shall we say? Even in how he kind of trips over before he puts the ball in the back of the net, kind of falling over as he puts it in. It's a very kind of, I don't know, if you want to see a goal that is massively representative of England's campaign to qualify for the 1982 World Cup, that goal sums it up really, doesn't it?
It is trying to run through a brick wall kind of thing. I mean, he's... Let's be charitable and call it the upper arm that he controls the ball with. He basically pulls it down into his path, just about goes around the goalkeeper, falls over, and then stabs the ball into the bottom corner. I mean, it's an archetypal Bryan Robson goal. It sums up Bryan Robson as well as that. Nothing's going to get in his way, nothing's going to stop him, and he just, he's barreling through it like a bulldozer, really. And ultimately scores the goal, and that's 15 minutes in or something, and that sort of crowns a decent start for England. Not nothing spectacular, nothing special, but they've been the better team. They've played most of the game in the opposition half. There haven't really been too many scares to that point, and they've done all right. And you think, okay, England are on their way now. This is a real opportunity to go on and win this game and book their place in the World Cup, which of course then doesn't materialise. But it's classic Bryan Robson. Nothing's going to stop me. I'm going to keep going. And the 3 or 4 opportunities for him to cock it up, but eventually he just stabbed the ball in the back of the net.
He does indeed. There are massive opportunities for that goal not to happen. But yeah, by sheer force of will, he's decided himself that this ball is going over the goal line. Norway, for their part, during this first 35 minutes, they're counter-attacking, causing occasional unease in the England defence. I think we'd have to call it the set pieces. Clements is forced into a decent save from a Harida header at the back post. It's the one opportunity really you can point towards for Norway, but within that, there's not too many opportunities for England apart from the goal that goes in. Atkinson is branding the Norway defence as naive. There's a they're getting themselves comfortable in the commentary box for a routine England win at this point in time. They're insulting the foreign hosts. It's Bryan Robson's opened the scoring with a belligerent goal that had even Brian Moore had to concede. It had a hint of handball. So it's that kind of obvious as he leans into it that even the English commentator has to think, I can't ignore that. I'm going to have to acknowledge that happened. The ITV commentary team are quite happy with their lot after 35 minutes.
They are, and Ron Atkinson in particular is really bigging up the England performance, and this is excellent from England, and you look at the game, and you think, well, they're okay, but I wouldn't say they were doing anything special. This game is.
They were doing enough. That was as much as it was, really, wasn't it?
Just about
at this point in time, they're just about doing enough. Yeah.
And you can only hope that the goal then sort of settles everything down, and gradually as the game goes on, the fact that they are professionals and there are some amateurs in the Norway team, the fitness more than anything else goes on and makes a difference. But in that first half, when Norway are as fit as England, as you say, there are a number of breakthroughs, a number of breaks from counter-attacks that cause problems as the game starts to wear on. And then, around the half-hour mark, England just lose their way completely. And it's like they've suddenly realised this formation's bollocks. We don't know what we're doing. And, like the first half an hour, they've got away with it. And it's like they suddenly look at one another and think, well, who's supposed to be there? And is that my job? And what are you doing? And that they just sort of look at one another. And for 15 minutes before half time, they're just in a state of collapse, really.
It's a remarkable collapse as well, isn't it? That's the thing. It's just like utterly bewitching. And it's all self-inflicted. As much as I'm an advocate for Ray Clements, it's a shocking goal to concede. For the equaliser at his near post. And before they've had the chance to kind of shake that out of the system, this shocker from McDermott on the edge of his own penalty area that hangs his former club mate in Clements out to dry. And Clements himself, he's slow to drop for this one. Clearly not expecting it. These two Norway goals within the space of about 240 seconds of one another. For it to unravel quite so emphatically, so quickly, it is all of England's own making.
The first goal, it's a cross of sorts from Lund on the right, slight deflection on it, and then there's a Norwegian player, it's Albertson, I think it is, who's just in front of Clements at the near post. And you can only assume that having him there, Clements has taken his eye off the ball, and it's sort of squirmed in at the near post, mistake by the goalkeeper. But then, as you say, nobody settles from there. Again, it's almost like, well, yeah, we kind of expected this now because we really don't know what we're doing, and we're in trouble here. And there's nobody really going to take hold of the game at that point. Keegan's trying to lead them from the front. He's the archetypal Kevin Keegan, but nobody's responding to it really. And then the second goal, as you say, McDermott's trying to cut out the ball that's going across the top of the penalty area. Doesn't get anything like enough on it, and just drops the ball dead for Torresson to turn and smack it past Clement. Clement, I'm not quite sure what he's trying to do, because if he's going to save that shot, because it's so close to him, isn't it? If he's going to save it, he's going to save it with his feet, isn't it? Really,
yeah.
He's going
to stick your leg out for.
Yeah. It's trying to make the proper save because you're playing for England, kind of thing. And if there's a bit of that, or a bit of, I'm not having a very good start to the season, I want to make a proper save, and
overthinking it.
Yeah, but he's part of it as well. And suddenly England are going in 2-1 at half time, and John Bond is about to do his nut on television.
Isn't he just? And it is a glorious thing at half time with John Bond. And a startled looking Jim Rosenthal, a young and startled looking Jim Rosenthal, it has to be said. Bond, yeah, he really kind of like goes double barrels on Glenn Hoddle in particular. I mean, I don't know, pre-match, he'd voiced his concerns about Clement's form. He'd been an advocate that Shilton should be playing. So you fully expected him to go, harebrained on Clements, but he doesn't really. He kind of like, he acknowledges the mistake, but he's looking elsewhere to pin his blame. And by now, Trevor Francis is his man at Manchester City. So he does kind of temper it as much as he can, because he can't be lambasting his own player basically. But Hoddle takes a lot of his ire, as does McDermott. Understandably for the error that he's part of for the second goal. If you're going to watch anything of this, if you're not going to watch the game in full, find the goal, find the brief highlights, but go to the video footage of the YouTube footage of the entire match and just look at all of the pre-match, half-time and post-match chat. It is glorious. And John Bond is just kind of like, he just looks like he's been told it's salad for tea. He's not even looking at the camera. He's kind of like drumming his teeth. He's just kind of like completely and utterly. It's majestic, isn't it, Dave?
It is, and of course he's also in the Ron Greenwood camp, isn't he? From way back, so he doesn't want to have too much of a go at Ron Greenwood either. And Greenwood has to take, for all the injuries and whatever, Greenwood's got to take a big chunk of the blame for this, because it is such a dysfunctional lineup. It's a mess. On top of which, virtually all the players are having a stinker. I mean, Paul Mariner, who barely gets a mention up front, he has an absolute mare, doesn't he? Nothing sticks. Any ball that comes into him, he doesn't control. It
bounces off him. Yeah, his second touch is trying to chase after the ball.
And Paul Mariner, a great player, and
absolutely,
goals for England and all that sort of stuff. But he's just having one of them nights, and it is in part one of those games where the formation is killing them. But equally, there's half a dozen players who are just having a nightmare on top of that, which is the recipe for the disastrous result. And, when they come out after the second half and ITV pictures go back to the ground and there's no substitutions, you're thinking, well, why not, really? I mean, you've got to do something to change the course of the game, to change the conversation. Of course, it is the days of only 2 substitutes, so, Greenwood's keeping his powder dry, as I say, but something needed to be done to change the run of that game, because it was obvious at half time that it was starting to slip away, and 2-1 was actually worse than it looked as a scoreline, because there was no sense that England were going to get control of the game.
No, I mean, Norway are emboldened at this point, aren't they? I mean, that pace that they've got in midfield is quite telling. No, this, like you say, the personnel of the England side. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Given the circumstances of who we've mentioned as missing. I mean, 9 of the players that start this game have either, a European Cup winners' medal to their name or a UEFA Cup winners' medal to the name. And I think the vast majority of those with a European Cup winners' medal to the name also have a UEFA Cup winners' medal to the name. The only 2 that don't are Glenn Hoddle and Bryan Robson. Robson's on the eve of signing for Manchester United, and Hoddle's Hoddle. He's just won the FA Cup the previous May. He'll win it again that season. So this is a team that shouldn't be in this situation. No matter what. And yeah, Greenwood and his formation. They're playing a formation that none of them are familiar with. None of them play at club level. It's been something drawn on the back of a fag packet, and let's have a go at this. And clear indecision. Going into the second half, England start the second half quite brightly. It's a fascinating 45 minutes. England do have periods when they're on top. As mentioned, Hoddle is withdrawn with 25 minutes to go. Peter Barnes comes on and he does offer width and a bit of trickery on the left-hand side. Francis is shifted to the right. He did start out as a winger, played a European Cup final as a right winger for Nottingham Forest. the game had clearly passed Hoddle by, as we've mentioned. But this, and again, that clash of heads just can't. England are building up a little bit of a head of steam, but that clash of heads can't go underestimated. He is in the days for quite a prolonged period of time. There's a lot of loose balls, slow reactions, but England still have chances. Keegan has a header cleared off the line, but then at the other end, Pal Jakobsen breaks through, and Clements is forced into a very good save. So Clements has this really peculiar juxtaposition of a game. The errors that he's involved in for the goals, yet he makes 3 decent saves that on another day, would see an opposing team scoring more goals. And within the blink of an eye, the game could have either been 2-2 or 3-1. With those the chances for Keegan and Jakobsen. There's Mariner at the near post, as you say, but the ball, it kind of runs slightly behind him, and he can't quite get the purchase that he wants on it. Sends it wide. But Barnes, he does make a sporadic difference when he comes on, until probably the last 10 minutes. The last 10 minutes of that game, apart from a glaring moment that we'll come to in a minute. As the game starts to progress, those last 10 minutes, there's clearly a kind of the shoulders have slumped now, and this is, they were sleepwalking towards defeat.
It's all the things that people say England shouldn't be doing. The stereotype again. England will go to the last minute, and then the character and the fight and all of that stuff. And there's absolutely none of that in that last sort of 15 minutes. Peter With comes on for Mariner after 75 minutes. And there's virtually no fight.
Yeah, there's no discernible. If you think Mariner's been kind of like out of it, then With can't even get into it at all.
Yeah. And to be fair, in that second half, although England have got more of the ball and they're playing in the opposition half and all that sort of stuff, that's largely because Norway is saying, right, okay, we'll have 8-9 men behind the ball, and every time we can kick it forward, we're quicker than they are, and we'll have a chance at goal. And there's, as you say, there's good saves from Clement. There's also 2 or 3 last-ditch tackles from Osman, and Mills makes one. To keep England in the game, because it could easily have been 3 or 4-1 at points in that second half. And then it's just acceptance of defeat. It's just, this isn't going to be our night. We've had it, kind of thing. Brian Moore is building this game up as we've got to win this. We've got to at least get a draw, otherwise we're out of the World Cup. You look at the table and you can see what he's saying, but equally there is still an opportunity for England. And we'll come on to the bizarre nature of the order of the games that get played between then and the end of the group as well in a bit. But it's just there isn't any of that. There isn't even any of that rubbishy England stuff where you just lump the ball into the box and hope something will happen. No. It's just a very sedate, oh, well, we've had it here.
They kind of amble towards it, don't we?
Absolutely.
It's quite stunning watching how it unfolds. And amid it all, Norway, say they become increasingly resilient in defence. That kind of like naivety that Atkinson's talking about is no longer evident. And if anything, it's naivety at the back for England. Osman and Thompson both make individual errors that almost kind of like give Norway opportunities. Thoresen, hits the side netting when a cross would have been, a better option. There's another save that Clements makes from Jakobsen. And like I say, if anything, it gets to a point where Norway are by far the more likely to score again than England are. Yet then there are these 2 opportunities right at the very last for England. One of which is a cross from Peter Barnes that Francis gets his head onto, and he should score. He flashes it wide of the post from the back post. He flashes it far of the far post. When it was easy to get the ball on target. And then Norway themselves almost contrived to score this peculiar own goal past their backup goalkeeper, who Tor Antonsen, who's not played a game of international football for Norway for 6 years, who proves, so this polarisation of performance of goalkeepers. There's Clements with all the honours is a world-class goalkeeper, and Norway's plucky understudy who's not had a game since 1975, proving to be the hero. And there it is, England's those 2 late England chances, Dave. It's kind of like the top hat.
Ultimately, the players are right. It is one of those nights where nothing's going to go right for you. I mean, the Francis one, it really is a golden opportunity to score and be the hero and all of that. And he heads it wide, and then as a rant at the defender who's cannoned into him way after he's played the header, so trying to deflect a bit of attention, and then the attempted own goal. But it is one of those where it's one of those great football stories. The goalkeeper who's come from nowhere to come back in and play really well for Norway. Tommy Lund, who spends the off season trying to get on the ferry to come and watch Tottenham play as often as he can. There he is out playing Glenn Hoddle and Ray Clements.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great story of London, isn't it? I mean, the Norwegian domestic season ending in late October, early November, something like that. And his winter months between November and March, when it's the off season for Norway, are spent just kind of like knocking around London, watching the team that he supports, Tottenham Hotspur, following them home and away for months on end. And there he is on the pitch at the Ullevaal.
I mean, it ought to be an FA Cup third round tie, shouldn't it? I mean, it is one of those with all those sorts of ingredients in it for that we'll be talking now as a great giant killing. But I think on the day you have to say or on the night rather, they were the better team. They deserved the win, really. Certainly in terms of creating the best chances. Norway had the best chances through the game, and they deserved the win. And I mean, again, going back to the ITV coverage. Of course, the game was played early. I think it was like a 6 o'clock kickoff.
Yeah, 6 o'clock kickoff. Yeah.
So Brian Moore's always giving the score out because people coming home from the office just getting back into it. Yeah.
None of this score in the top right hand, left or right hand corner live,
or a clock or anything. So you got no idea what's going on, and it is like another world now because there's no way that happens now. I mean, now you're playing that game at 8 o'clock, so everybody can have the maximum TV audience, all that kind of stuff. But now one of those ones where everything falls into place, or falls out of place, really, from an England perspective.
It is. It's truly, truly magnificent. And then obviously, we come to our moment of infamy, and that full-time whistle, and the iconography of Bjørge Lillelien, I think it is. Lillelien.
I'll leave it with you.
Yeah, Bjørge Lillelien. And his epic commentary line of on Norwegian radio.
Insert audio clip here.
Absolutely, because he'll do it far better than me. But yeah, Lord Nelson, Lord Beaverbrook, Sir Winston Churchill, Sir Anthony Eden, Clement Attlee, Henry Cooper, Lady Diana. I always remember the emphasis on Lady Diana. Maggie Thatcher, can you hear me, Maggie Thatcher? Your boys took one hell of a beating. I'm breaking into the mild Norwegian accent there as well of earlier modules. Just a magnificent moment in football, Dave.
Yeah, that is the cream and the cherry and the icing and everything else that you want to put on the cake.
It's the on-pitch celebrations as well. This on a night when there were crowd disturbances, unsurprisingly, on the terraces at the Ullevaal. There is one moment in which a Chelsea fan manages to get himself to a flagpole, and he removes the flag from the top of the flagpole, sticks a Union Jack on it saying Chelsea on it. It's the most national front moment possibly in September 1981. It's very much a telling visual, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. It sums up pretty much everything about England abroad in that kind of period. Yeah, 12 months on from the European Championships and all the trouble there. Every now and again in the first half, the coverage is punctuated by somebody being carried out by the police, and then they cut to the Norwegian fans celebrating, and they're all dressed in their best suits up against the wire fences, which is quite a nice touch.
And strains of "You'll Never Walk Alone" as well, that I quite enjoyed as well. Which I don't think they weren't coming from the England fans that night. I mean, this is peculiar. I mean, I'm sure I must have mentioned it a million times over. Is that "You'll Never Walk Alone" used to be sung by a lot of football clubs and sets of supporters. You can watch an old FA Cup final from anywhere across the 60s, 70s, even into the the 1980s, and you've got kind of like You'll Never Walk Alone reverberating around Wembley Stadium from the voices of those who are following the team who are about to lift the cup. But these are very much Norwegian fans singing this one on this occasion. It is a true testament of magnificence of this event, Dave.
It is. I mean, it is one of those ones that will live on forever. I think it's not a great result for England, obviously, but it's one of those things that makes football, isn't it? It is one of those great stories. And I mean, watching the game over the last couple of days in preparation for this, I suppose I've seen some of the goals, obviously, since one or two, but it's all just very vivid still. It is one of those games that sticks. One or two cup finals stick, or one or two internationals or whatever. Every sort of moment sticks somehow, and lots of it wasn't a surprise.
It's that rarity of the era as well. It's a rare live game on television. We could probably count on two hands the amount of live games that we would be watching in 1981 across the back end of 80-81 and the front end of 81-82. So they were kind of appointment to view. The nation did kind of stop for a game of football that was on television at that point in time. It meant something. So they did make a deep imprint. And I went in to watch this thinking, what bits have I forgotten over the years and stuff like that? And there wasn't much in it that I thought, I'd totally forgotten about that. Or I'd totally forgotten about that. Which means just how much of it made that imprint back then.
Yeah, I mean, you had to watch it because it was live. And what would you have got that year? You would have got the cup final. You would have got England-Scotland.
Yeah, European Cup final.
That's about it, really.
I think at that time you were getting the England away World Cup qualifiers live, which was part of kind of like, encouraging kind of like supporters not to travel.
Yeah.
And to cause trouble. It had creeped into this little era, and I think that was the year that the League Cup final was shown live for the first time. But it was the replay. I remember the Liverpool West Ham Villa Park replay of the 81 European. So it was still a rarity, and not being a year in which there was a World Cup or European Championship, it meant that there was even less in the way of the opportunity to watch a game live on television. And of course we all jumped at this. But yeah, what a game, what an evening, what an event. Back in the ITV studio, John Bond surprisingly insists that England's World Cup hopes aren't over, even though Brian Moore and Jim Rosenthal have kind of like reiterated many times over that while England can still mathematically qualify for the World Cup, it's unlikely to happen. John Bond does prove to be Nostradamus. At this point, Romania stunningly failed to win any of their final three qualifiers, which it brings a situation where England walk out at Wembley in November to face Hungary, only needing the draw to qualify for the World Cup. Stunningly, and they get a 1-0 win. Paul Mariner scores the goal, and through they go. Yeah, that night. After the defeat in Oslo, England are in a very, very shaky position at that point in time. There is, there is no longer any room for error. I think you say they're a point clear, and then suddenly all of these games in hand that everyone has on them. Romania, how did they manage it under Stefan Kovacs as well, Dave? One of the great thinkers of football. Romania go on and play Hungary, a goalless draw in Budapest. And there's a lot of Romanian pressure, but they're unable to make a breakthrough. String of fine saves by Meszaros in goal for Hungary. They even clip the crossbar. There's a lot of what might have been. They then contrive to lose 2-1 at home to Switzerland. The 1-up as well in that game. Yet they lose 2-1. There's a missed opportunity at 1-0, a save by Bergner. Within that, the equaliser goes in off the back of the goalkeeper's head. It hits the post. It's a shot from distance. hits the back of the keeper's head, the stern diving goalkeeper's head, Romanian goalkeeper's head, and goes in. Following which Switzerland have a little bit of Norway. They're emboldened by the sudden elevation in position, and then they go on to win. And then a goalless draw in Switzerland, despite a fast start from Romania. The best chances fall to the Swiss. And there's a late opportunity wasted by Romania still. But even then, if Romania were to snatch a late winner in Switzerland, it just means that England would have to win their game against Hungary to qualify. This is pretty stunning to take just 1 point from a possible 4 against Switzerland, basically, for Romania, despite having taken 3 off England in the 2 games, 2 points for a win. Romania's part in this is, massively undersold, and England's resurrection from the disaster of Oslo in September 81 to just 6, 7, 8 weeks later, qualifying with ease. It's a ludicrous turnaround.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, you can only assume that the pressure gets to Romania, but they do. They absolutely blow it in those 2 games. But the interesting thing is you look through that last bit of qualifying, and every qualifying date, only 1 game. Nowadays everybody plays at the same time, and you are where you are. I mean, that's the great thing. England play that last game at home against Hungary, and they know exactly what they've got to do. And they're playing an Hungarian team that's already qualified and couldn't care less.
Yeah. And they just need all they need to do is avoid defeat at that point in time.
Yeah. So everything falls for England. I mean, England are fortunate in that it's a group where everybody's much of a muchness. I mean, you look at the table, and it's Hungary 10 points, England 9 points, Romania 8 points, Switzerland 7 points, Norway 6 points. So it is one of those classic everybody can beat everybody kind of groups, and that ultimately works out in England's favour to give them that chance. And like Hungary, they're the only team that wins 4 games. Had that last batch of games been played on the same night, then that might have been a bit more interesting. But I think the scheduling helped England. In the finishing a group format, when you play each other home and away as opposed to the Champions League, the best team wins it, doesn't it? over that period, really. And the second best team comes in second, and England were just about the second best team in that group. Beat Hungary twice, who were the group winners. So, ultimately deserved to qualify. And then, after all these trials and tribulations, they went to Spain in that summer, and it wasn't a fantastic England performance, but at the same time they weren't in a bizarre World Cup setup with the groups and all of that. They weren't that far away from having a very, very successful World Cup in '82. So they were a considerably better unit by the time they got to the summer than they were in Oslo in September.
Yeah, Greenwood kind of goes, a little bit back to type of those early years in a way. He makes the decision on a goalkeeper. He opts for Shilton, which it's understandable, but at the same time, Shilton being a shot stopper compared to Clement, who was quick out the blocks and quick to release the ball to his fullbacks and all of that. It's very telling that England progressively score fewer goals as that World Cup goes along, from the 3 that they put in against France to the 2 against Czechoslovakia, 1 against Kuwait, and then failing to score against West Germany and Spain. The importance of a progressive goalkeeper rather than a shot stopper, undoes them in the end. But to go there and then return home unbeaten, only conceding 1 goal, it's a it's a yin and yang there for England, but it's more noticeable that that's a team that kind of plays, with a set of players really, apart from Koppel missing the Spain game, and a couple of changes in the Q8 game after England are already through to the next stages, but and then a greater consistency, I'd say, with a settled side. Which is the watchword, and those England qualifiers for the 1982 World Cup was nothing like a settled side in terms of the consistency. Wales were playing that night, Dave. We were getting updates as the game went along. They were in Prague to face Czechoslovakia. They were in a strong position to strike, for much stronger position than England were in September 1981 to strike for qualification. They would eventually lose in Prague and slip up at home to Iceland to blow qualification. But there were other things being brandished by in our "and finally" section for Jim Rosenthal's evening of coverage. He makes mention of upcoming sporting events on ITV. Week-long coverage of the Jameson International Open, the snooker from the Assembly Rooms in Derby. Steve Davis predictably wins the tournament, defeating Dennis Taylor 9-0 in the final. Ruthless in that respect. Shades of the 1985 World Snooker Championship final, where he shoots into an 8-0 lead, but obviously only to infamously lose it at the last. There is a deciding frame semi-final against Alex Higgins that goes all the way to a decider. And he's also billing the what will be a biblical boxing clash between Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Still within the 15-round era, it goes to 14 before Leonard takes it on a TKO. He is behind on points, however, when the points are totaled up after the fight. Dave, were you angling towards the snooker or the boxing for would take your interest out of those two?
I might be wrong, but I seem to remember the boxing one was on at the same time as Match of the Day, which was some sort of a scheduling problem there. I did see the boxing late. I mean, the snooker at that point, I mean, that was when Steve Davis was really...
He's just starting to take a stranglehold, isn't he?
You just start to lose interest in it because it's... What sport if you know who's going to win? That's the great thing about this Norway game, isn't it? But that fight, it's one of those ones that was for the ages, wasn't it? In the end, controversy and all got everything in it. But Dennis Taylor 9-0, and then there we are 3 or 4 years later, 8-0 down. Was it in the World Championship final?
He was 8-0 down in the '85 World Snooker Final, only to win it 18-17 with that iconic black ball finish that finished at about 3 days after it was meant to finish. And everyone was late for school and work the following day. But 81, it wasn't to be for Dennis Taylor there.
No.
But snooker absolutely massive on the television at that point in time. The top 40 on the day of the England-Norway game in Oslo. What were you illegally recording from the
I looked through this earlier. I actually bought Abacab by Genesis as an old prog rock.
All right.
Trying to find out what this new Genesis thing was after Phil Collins had become famous. And it was okay. I have gone through this chart. Dear God, it's a stinker, isn't it? I mean,
it's not a halcyon one. It's not a halcyon one at all.
It's absolutely dreadful.
I look through these and normally find that there's songs further down the chart that kind of like speak to me than higher up the chart. The higher they go, the more sparse they are. But even looking further down the chart here, I'm really, really, really struggling to take too much.
This is neither when the Birdie song has just gone into the charts with a bullet at number 44. So
the Birdie song at
Vale at this point.
I mean, Taken Away by Paul McCartney. That's one of his better solo efforts. Save a Prayer, Duran Duran. It's as Duran Duran as it gets there. Yeah, I mean, just John Wayne is big leggy. Hazy Fantasy. I mean, Arthur Daly, He's All Right by The Firm at number 14. Absolutely shocking. The Clapping Song by the Bell Stars, number 11. I'd listen to that if it was on the radio. Strange Little Girl by the Stranglers at number 7. It Started With a Kiss. Hot Chocolate at number 5. Don't Go Yazoo at number 4. Eye of the Tiger, Survivor, with a little bit of Rocky thrown in, and It's Come On Eileen at number 1. Dexy's Midnight Runners. I suppose some songs, some tunes in there, Dave, that fall under the radar that you don't. I'd say there's a few there that you wouldn't necessarily class as your favourite song, but then you hear them and you think, actually, that's a bit of a banger.
Yeah,
that one.
There's a bit of that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit of a banger.
Grown fonder with age, probably.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's but some of those. If you're at a family disco and they came on, you'd tap your foot. Might not necessarily get you on the dance floor, but you'd nod away to it. A night at the cinema instead. How about the cinema box office, Dave?
I mean, there's two. I have no. Continental Divide was number 2. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, Continental Divide, have no idea. Raggedy Man doesn't ring a bell at all. It's going to have to be Chariots of Fire for me in at number 4.
The BBC is still flogging to death every 6 months.
And constantly use that tune for their Olympic coverage as well.
No, actually, Charity for fair play. I'll take that.
Absolutely. The television offerings after the England game. Yeah, this makes a bit of interesting reading. What are you? You're gonna actually we'll come to that in a minute. Our other one first. A rundown of the back page headlines I'd go with, and then we'll go to a bit of television to laugh at the television offerings. Interestingly, England had played in the under-21s. Their under-21s had played Norway the previous day. The England under-21 side of 24 hours before, Gary Bailey. I don't think much is going to become of that lad. There's Colin Gibson of Aston Villa. There's Terry Fenwick of QPR. Steve McKenzie at West Bromwich Albion, by now at West Bromwich Albion. Mick Duxbury of Manchester United. Tommy Caton of Manchester City. Is it Gary Mills, wasn't it, at Nottingham Forest? Justin Fashanu, also at Forest. Gary Thompson of Coventry City. Adrian Heath of Stoke City. And is it Mark Proctor? Mark Proctor of Nottingham Forest? Any of those you think are going to go on to greatness for the senior England side?
It's amazing how few of them did get many England caps, isn't it? Really, when you look at it, I mean, that England side that Ron Green would have got. I mean, a lot of it was there for a long time, even though the likes of Brooking and Keegan packed up after the '82 World Cup. It became Gary Owen was another one, not in that side, but I mean, he played about 30 times, didn't he, for England under 21s? Never got a full cap. There never seemed to be much of a progression at that point in time to come through. Certainly under Ron Greenwood, you had to be about 26 before you get an England cap anyway. There was never that kind of progression, was there?
No, that was absolutely the case. I mean, some interesting kind of like scouting missions going on when it comes to the back pages. There's quite a lot of scouts heading to Easter Road, Hibernian. Arsenal, West Ham, Brighton, Queen's Park Rangers, all with representatives going watching the Scottish under-21 side. Targets are Steve Nicol of Ayr United, Joe McLaughlin of Morton, and Paul Sturrock of Dundee United. West Ham have been closely watching Nicol, valued at £250,000, with Sturrock valued at $500,000. Parallel world there, Dave. Steve Nicol is a West Ham United recruit rather than a Liverpool one.
It is interesting going back to those old papers and seeing who might have gone where.
Yeah, it does. It is.
What might have been for West Ham at that point?
Interestingly, West Ham are actually top of the First Division at this point in time from the weekend's games. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's kind of like we're only 3 games in, so it's the first weekend in which a league table is actually printed, and West Ham are the pace setters. A lot of unusual names towards the top end of that table. Swansea City, who would run for quite a long point of that season. Amongst the mix of it, but Stoke City up there as well, Manchester City, who would be until kind of like New Year before falling away. So yeah, an interesting league table there, some interesting scouting going on. There's also talk of Liam Brady coming back to English football. He is apparently being quoted as saying that 3 years away would be enough for any country, says Brady, whose contract expires in 2 years' time. In the summer of 1982, he would leave Juventus, but that he'd be off to Milan, to Inter. So yeah, his return to English football would not come until much later in the decade. And there's gloom at Ipswich Town for the England international Kevin Beattie, who is to undergo a 5th operation on his right knee. Dave, any particular sliding door that interests you amongst all that?
Well, Swansea City have got to be worth a module of their own at some point.
Definitely.
In the series. But Kevin Beattie, it was such a shame, all the injuries that he had, because he was such a great player. I mean, a properly great player. He could have been the sort of the centre half that followed in the Bobby Moore era. He could have been a really big player for England, but too many injuries. All too often, but he was a fantastic player, and one of those great might have beens, isn't it, Kevin Beattie? I think.
Yes, absolutely. And one more transfer one. Arsenal are reputedly hovering for John Hawley of Sunderland, the former Leeds United striker, and that's a speculative rumour that does actually come true. They're billing him as the potential delayed replacement for Frank Stapleton. He does actually join Arsenal, but he plays just 20 league games for them, scoring 3 times before heading off on a spate of loan moves to Leyton Orient, Hull City, and Happy Valley, of which, not the takeaway down the road, but a club in Hong Kong, before moving on to Bradford City in the summer of 1983. Yes, our television options for the evening of the 9th of September 1981, beyond the England game, which kicked off at 6. The coverage being over by 8 o'clock. On ITV, if you're sticking with ITV, Dave, you've got Coronation Street. There's a private rehearsal for the forthcoming Mr. and Mrs. contest at the Rovers' return, followed by Only When I Laugh. The new woman doctor is young, pretty, but inexperienced. The malingerer Archie Glover, for one, doesn't want to put his body in her hands. This is deemed the pick of the day. There is a new 13-part saga about a family of Hatton Garden diamond merchants called Diamonds. And then after the news at 10, you've got the bestsellers, concluding Murder in Texas, which I have not a clue what that is meant to be. Over on BBC One, you've got BBC were actually showing Running Wild, a 1973 movie, as the alternative to watching England's debacle in Oslo.
I was giving up.
This was followed by Fighter Pilot, a drama where the story starts in 1978, where 34 young men cut out an ad from their newspaper and applied to become Air Force jet pilots. 9 o'clock news followed by Salem's Lot, and a programme called Cosmos at 10:55. It's a farewell to Carl Sagan, Dave. That one.
I vaguely remember Cosmos, actually. Now you said
remember
that.
Cosmos? Yeah.
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that particular episode. Yeah, it was a farewell to Carl Sagan, whose voyage in the spaceship of imagination ends tonight. The professor has attracted a devout following, as well as some irreverent remarks. BBC Two, the nonsense that BBC Two was trading on. Spine chillers at 7. Some international swimming from Yugoslavia, the European Championships at 7:10. 25 minutes of swimming before Sandor Vague Masterclass, Hungarian violinist. Body in Question, followed by Percy Edwards and Enigma, plus the Echoes of War. Dave, what are you inflicting upon yourself there amongst all that? What are you desperately avoiding?
I think I'd have been doing my homework.
I think it's homework and the radio that night. We could have turned in radio terms. Richard Skinner was on at 8 o'clock on Radio 1.
I think that would have been.
Yeah, I think it would have been Richard Skinner and a bit of homework, I think, Dave.
Of all of those, the only thing I can actually vaguely remember is Cosmos, which I think was a Carl Sagan thing about how the universe began. I think.
Yeah, that's what it's reading as. That's what it's reading as. But yeah, Cosmos might have been worth watching. But Only When I Laugh, I can remember watching that, Figgis and all those. And I think that's the only thing that might have drawn me towards the television. Certainly before the news was on. I've definitely had enough to Richard Skinner and either homework or playing some Subbuteo. But Dave, thank you so much. It has been a wonderful way to do Module 9, our origin story. Have you enjoyed it?
It's been a glorious wander down memory lane. That YouTube thing, you've got to go out and watch it. I mean, it's not just for the game or for the pun. It's just it's a time capsule of a different game as well. You know, I mean, goalkeepers can pick the ball up from back passes, and every time anybody even vaguely wanders into an offside position, the whistle goes. You know, whether the ball's coming anywhere near them or not. It is football from a different world. It's fascinating.
Absolutely, and it's coverage and punditry from a different world as well, isn't
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah, you can see kind of like a very startled kind of like Jim Rosenthal at times alongside John Bond.
He looks like he's reporting on a car accident on the M6 or something, doesn't he? I mean,
he absolutely does, and it was something of a car crash, to be fair. Magnificent. This has been Module 9 of Your Boys Took One Hell of a Beating, our origin story. Please do go and spread the word, and we'll be back very soon for Module 10. Thank you and goodbye.